welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm at the New York, Las Vegas Strip, and right here is a very significant space. It doesn't look significant, but where my hand is here, where we're moving, we have what's left, the absence of the 9/11 memorial at the New York. I'll show you some images of this classic space. You know, this for me was a key, I think, in terms of thinking about the significance of the theme here, right? It was more than a facade. If you're paying tribute to 9/11, you're in a sense saying there is a relationship between this stuff here, the Statue of Liberty, the buildings, everything that we see, all the facades that have a New York symbolism or meaning to them. And the fact that you had the 9/11 memorial was significant. I mean, in a sense, it proved to the critics that there was something going on here that was beyond facade and surface, beyond the tired Paul Goldberg or Ada Louise Huxtable drivel that we reread in their texts that are all about basically asserting that there's no meaning to themed spaces. And hopefully those critiques are well behind us, because they just have no bearing in reality, strangely enough, because those critics, of course, were always talking about, or still talking about, this idea that theme spaces and venues like these themed casinos have no basis in reality. They do have a basis in reality. Symbolism, contrary to what those critics would say, is much more complex. Think of Baudrillard's work on the symbol. Think of so many literary critics' work on the symbol, and you certainly understand this and maybe agree with this. But to go back to the 9/11 memorial, which used to be here, again, my sense is its disappearance says something about how the New York is changing in terms of its theming. When you had the 9/11 memorial here, there was some sense of saying we do have an identity here with the city, with New York City, whereas with its erasure, with its absence today, I think you could say that there's a movement away from it. Now, we'll never see, leaving behind perhaps the exterior obvious symbolism and themes. Okay, I actually did live voiceover, but the wind noise was so extreme I'm going to redub it, so you'll see my fingers pointing up. But what I'm trying to point out here is above the entrance to New York is this is the old area where we used to see the memorial, and I'm pointing to that. So right along there was the entirety of the memorial, and now there's just the one flag, and I think there's actually two flags and two plaques. I'm going to talk about also in a second about an old video that I shot years ago when we saw the full memorial. So my sense was that just, this area was being transformed, is being transformed. If you think about the radical changes just down the way, the work of the Melk architecture group, landscape architects, they've been doing the park area. They've also done the area in front of New York, and I'm pointing out here, this entire quadrant of the strip is changing. So I think in a sense this memorial is changing with it. Now, it occurred to me recently in August of 2017 that with the controversies over the removal of Confederate statues, at some point I need to do a video on that very topic and talk about how memorials do not have a permanence. Statues, remembrance, there's a fading effect of memory. If you read literary critics and existential philosophers and so forth, that needs to be considered here. So on the one hand, I think we could say it's maybe a disappointment that the full-fledged memorial isn't still here, but on the other hand, we can say it's a sign of the times, how people do move on, and remembrance has this kind of, I guess you'd say, almost fuzzy character when we think about it. Okay, and then this was that previous video, a casino memorial, New York, Las Vegas. I don't have the date on this, but it was many years ago because, of course, the monument was much different. This whole area was much different. And, for me, what was interesting, as I said earlier, was that they had all these plaques, they had all the material culture invested with all the memories of, firefighters and police officers and first responders, and then all these plaques, right? They had quite a few plaques of speaking about tyranny, speaking about different issues relative to that period of time. For me, I remember when I first saw this and I looked at these quotes, I thought, this is quite amazing that we're seeing this here. It goes back to my point that I think it lends a sense of reality to maybe the otherwise fictive nature of the theming at the New York, New York. When they created a direct allegiance with the city of New York, as did so many other places, but it was so much more significant here because, ironically enough, even though you have all the trappings of New York symbolism, a lot of cultural critics would say there's nothing New York about the New York, New York in Las Vegas, which I think is a real misnomer. And if you're interested, there's a great lawsuit years ago that was filed by entities in New York City against the New York, New York about the structure, the symbolism of the buildings and so forth. And I won't get into that, but interesting to look at if you're curious about this topic. So let me give you just a little bit more than on-site commentary about what remains of the memorial here at the New York, New York. Okay, so we have one memory, and we do have the flag here. If you pan up, you see the flag and the Statue of Liberty. So this is the memory, certainly. You can see they have an image of the old images. It was a much more, I'll show you the shots of this, but it was a much more extensive memorial. You do have the plaque here talking about how the world changed on 9/11, talking about strength and resilience. Talking about here in the days and years that followed, New York, New York's Lady Liberty was the place of honor to pay. I always love when people walk right in, it's pretty clear, right? I'm filming and people walk right in front of what I'm filming. But, talking here about how people use this space to pay tribute to the victims of 9/11. Just a constant. Try that again. So what this is saying is that it says something about memory and memorials, right? Like the constant interruption of meaning. So this says something about the fact that people use this space to pay tribute to the victims of 9/11. What happened then was, as you can see at the bottom of the plaque, they took the items to UNLV, and UNLV has a very extensive collection of casino memorabilia, designs, and everything. If you want to ever check that out, go online. They have a great digital collection. But so this is the significance. I'm really happy to see they left a part of it here at the New York, New York in Las Vegas. Okay, and with those notes, we close this return here looking at Remembrance at the 9/11 Memorial here in Las Vegas at the New York, New York Hotel and Casino. An opportunity to think about some of the strange and interesting connections of pop culture, memory, and traumatic events of the past. So with these reflections, I hope you come back for additional video features of the Immersive World's Handbook.